this is a special one for me. We're going to be talking to Eric Anderson, CEO of the Alexander Anderson Real Estate Group, and my friend, my partner, and really my mentor. You have found a way to take what you love and everything that you love, put it into real estate. You love helping people. You opened a school. You love working with people. You're a broker. You work with real estate agents. You work with clients. You love commercial. You love creativity. And you're always talking about how you can be as creative as you want in commercial real estate. And now you're developing a building. So that's a ton of creativity. Tell us how you got there. How did this start? How did your journey begin?
That's a great question. And I've told this story a couple times. It's a very emotional story for me. So let me start with real estate has brought me freedom. And without real estate, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do all these fun, creative things that I'm doing today. Nobody taught me real estate. I didn't know what real estate was. I didn't go to school for real estate. I didn't come from a real estate family. I just figured it out one day. I had an aunt who was a real estate agent, and my parents got divorced when I was like 14 years old. So we were looking for houses for my dad. And I remember that I got to go and, as the son, your dad wants to make you happy. He wants to make you part of the package, that I got to go and travel and go to all these houses. And this was back in the day. There used to be like a book. Today it's all computers, but back then there was a book and all the listings were put in a book.
I've heard about the book.
The book was like 2 inches thick and it was recycled newspaper print
Right.
And you had to flip through the pages and figure out what you wanted, and then the agent would have to call and see if the house is still available. And then if it wasn't, you'd put a big X on the paper. So I remember going through all these pages and pages and pages and going to see different properties, and it was just really fun. And
is that what gave you the bug for real estate? Or was this just fun as a 14-year-old?
I think it was fun as a 14-year-old. It was fun looking at other people's houses. Mm-hmm. It was fun.
You're a voyeur. Go ahead.
It was, yeah. It was fun trying to understand as a young person that there are budgets. I grew up in an affluent household. I wasn't the richest person by far. We were a middle class household, but we had a nice house. And with my parents' divorce, my dad couldn't buy the same caliber house that I came from.
Right.
So I was looking at things that were below what I was used to. And fortunately for me, my dad grew up in a family of teachers and electricians and handy people that could build their own house or fix their own house. So we were looking at fixer-uppers. And we were looking at how can we buy something that has the bones of what we're sort of used to, even though it's not there, and then turn it into something.
So as a young person, you were able to see how you could buy a fixer-upper and then the transformation process to making it what you really wanted.
Yes. It was,
okay.
It was something that I had the ability to do. Not everybody does. And I don't know why. I don't know why I got it, but I always had that ability to visualize stuff.
You are very good at that. You're very good at that. You see it, and you see it without anything being there.
And that's what makes a difference. And so many people are afraid to step out of their comfort zone and try to imagine. And I just imagined everything. I still imagine things. I still wake up in the morning and like, did that really happen or did I imagine it?
You probably imagined it.
But so I would imagine what I could do to these properties with my dad. And, my dad could do anything. He was much more talented when it came to hands-on renovations or repairs than I am today. I don't have, maybe I have 30% or 40% of what he could physically do. But I do have the visual knowledge and the understanding, which is great that he gave me.
Let's fast forward from baby Eric to adult Eric. Okay, so how did you actually jump into real estate? And I know this story, but I want everyone else to know your story because I think the way you started and your journey will resonate a lot.
So I worked in a family business, which had nothing to do with real estate. And I think I was making like $30,000 a year back in like.
Don't age yourself.
Yeah,
Let's
I
keep
don't
on
even
going.
know, but I was making like $35,000 a year.
Right.
And I was getting older, still young, because I bought my first house at 24. So I was probably 22, 23, somewhere in that range. And I was like, I need to move. I can't live with mommy anymore. I was living in the basement of her townhouse. And while I was appreciative, it wasn't glamorous and it wasn't the place you wanted to bring anyone home to.
Right. Couldn't bring the girls home.
So I was like, I have to figure out where to go and what to do. So I had saved up about $30,000 and I was looking everywhere. And I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey, and pretty much all of Bergen County, as you know, is
Expensive.
affluent and expensive.
It is.
And I was like, shit, there's nowhere for me to live. I can't afford anything. And I was looking in cities like Hudson County or Essex County and trying to find places that I could afford. And because I grew up in a sheltered environment, I wasn't used to any urban settings. I wasn't used to diversity of people. So for me, it was all really scary. And I came across a fixer-upper. Like I came across a real estate-owned property, which is when a bank takes back a property from the owner because they didn't pay their mortgage.
So basically it was foreclosed on.
It was a foreclosed on house. I found it. The house was they were asking like $140,000.
Okay.
It was in River Edge, New Jersey, and it was a Cape Cod. It was trashed. There were 3 bathrooms in the house. The Cape Cod, the upstairs was finished, but it was finished poorly. And there was, I remember that one of the bedrooms had Marvin the Martian, like spray painted on the walls, and like the tiles were missing and everything was broken and disgusting. But the house was $140,000.
So you were like, I can make it work.
So the house was not flying off the market because it wasn't foreclosed anymore. Now the bank took it back and they wanted to make their money. Okay. So there was probably 5 or 6 people bidding on this house. And now understand, for me, this was the perfect opportunity because I couldn't afford anything in Bergen County. Whereas other people were looking at this and like, oh my God, this is so overpriced for this neighborhood and for where it is. But for me, I was like, oh my God, I could afford this.
Right.
So I actually paid more than everyone else to buy this house that needed everything. When I talk about everything, I'm talking about everything needed to be changed in this house.
So did you fix it up yourself or did you hire people? What did you do to make this work?
It was a little bit of each. So,
because you're handy. You're very handy.
Yes. So I did the demo.
Okay.
So I remember demoing the attic area, and they had what was called blown-in insulation. So when I was taking the sheetrock down, it was like snowing. So when I was done, there was probably a foot of snow, aka insulation. God only knows what was in it. And I remember walking through this, and I have pictures somewhere, and like filling it up in barrels and dumping it into the dumpster. But so I did a lot of the work myself. The carpentry, when I did some additions to it, I actually hired people. But my dad helped me with the electric, and I did all the painting. I was super skinny back then because I worked through everything. Now I don't do anything anymore. But
now, did you know about all the permits that you needed and this, that, and the other? Was that something you already knew about, or was that something that you learned along the way?
It was a little bit of each.
Okay.
So my family knew about everything. So my dad would help me, and I had some understanding. And you just go with it, and you walk through it, and you figure it out. Permits are very important. They constantly change what you need permits for and what you don't need permits for, and it varies between commercial and residential. As long as you are honest and you talk to the building departments, they'll help you. They'll walk you through things. Most inspectors are super nice, and I've had great experiences. But you don't always have to do everything with the permit, so you just have to figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah. So that led me to renovating this house. As I said, I bought it for, let's say, $132,000. Took this house, probably spent about $120,000, every penny I had, to fix this house. And that wasn't even done because when I moved in without a kitchen.
Okay.
Okay. I moved in without sheetrock. You
were a young guy. You didn't need a kitchen.
Yeah. So, but what I realized was now I'm struggling because I maxed out all my credit cards. I spent all my money.
So let's get to that. You spent your money, but then you also did a lot of stuff on credit.
Well, you had to, because remember, if I had a bigger down payment, maybe I could have bought something better, but I didn't. So, but I had the ability for credit cards. I had great credit. I had, as I was working, I would generate more cash. So I spent everything, every penny. So like Burger King was what I was eating, or, I was paying for gas and quarters.
But let's qualify this.
Yes.
You were single.
Yes.
You had no kids.
Yes.
You were in your 20s.
Yes.
If you beeped up, it wouldn't really matter because you could pick yourself up and do it again, and you had the support of your family.
Yes. And one of the big things that I tell to people now is when you're young,
do it.
Go for broke, because you can always reset your life. When you're 50 and you have 3 kids, it's harder to do that stuff. That's a whole nother discussion. But so I had all these credit cards. I was maxed out. I was stuck. I went to the bank. I'm like, great, here's my house. I bought it for $132. Now it's worth $250, $260. Okay. What do? You go and you refinance. But because I had all my credit cards maxed out, my ratios didn't work anymore, and the bank wouldn't refinance me. And I'm like, shit, what do I do?
So what'd you do?
Okay. So I had to figure it out. And what I had to do was I had to go get a home equity loan.
Okay.
Okay. So I took a home equity loan on the property.
How much equity did you have in the house?
Well,
you didn't have much.
Well, I had the initial $32,000 deposit or whatever it was. Plus now my house is worth like another 100 more. So I had about 130 in equity. Okay. So I was able to tap that equity. I went and got a loan because the qualifications for a home equity loan are different than a regular conventional loan. I got a loan, paid off all my credit cards, and then a month later did it again and refinanced into a 30-year fixed mortgage at a better rate.
Okay.
So it was something that no one explained to me. I thought it was idiotic that I had to do that and that I couldn't get a bank to just give me the loan to begin with. So it was a learning experience.
So that was your first, let's say, your first flip, and you lived there. You actually
lived
there.
Yes.
Right. So, so it was an investment, but it was your home.
It was a combination of me figuring out what the hell am I doing, because again, nobody taught me real estate.
And wanting to get out of your mom's basement.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And obviously I saw how the equity kept going and building. Then once I finished the house, which was maybe like 6 months to a year later, because once I refinanced into the 30-year fixed, my cash flow changed because I would still make more money at work. And my payments were stabilized due to the new loan. I started to look at the property and realized that it was growing. So at this same time, I probably read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki.
Right, which you had me read, which I just love that book. Everyone has to read that book.
Yes.
No matter if you're going to go into real estate investing, you should read that book.
And this book just dumbed it down for me. Because again, I didn't learn anything about real estate in college. I didn't learn it from my family. I didn't learn it from anywhere. So what that book taught me was the difference between an asset and a liability. Most people don't understand what an asset is, and they don't understand what a liability is when it comes to their house.
Okay.
Okay, so a house that doesn't bring you money is not an asset, it's a liability. So everybody thinks that their home is their biggest asset.
It's not. So the house that you're just living in is a liability.
It's a liability.
Because you're pouring money into that house. The house that maybe it's a multifamily house and you're living upstairs, but you're getting a rent from the people downstairs or whatever.
If it's paying for you to live there, then that's an asset.
An asset.
So,
okay.
I had to figure out how to turn my liability into an asset. So one of the opportunities that came across my plate is I had an opportunity to buy a building. And it was a building that was in my family. My grandfather owned a building. He was retiring. He wanted to sell a building.
So when you say a building, an apartment building?
A commercial retail office building.
Oh, this is where commercial comes in.
Yes, this is where commercial comes in. I had never thought about doing it before. It just kind of presented itself to me. And while my grandfather was generous, he was not generous when it came to his real estate or to his business. He was a serious business person. He didn't believe in giving breaks, to me especially. So when the time came, he's like, I want to sell this. He had it appraised, and it appraised for like $800,000, let's say, around there. And I said, I said, I could try to pull this off. I'm like, would you give me the loan? He's like, no. He's like, but what I will do is, because I know that I have to pay, let's say, $100,000 in commission to a broker, I'll sell it to you for $700,000. Okay. So what I did is now I'm like a 25 or 26-year-old with, again, zero experience. I found a bank. And there was this guy named Mike Krasowski at Bergen Commercial Bank.
Is his name really Mike Krasowski? Because that's from like Monsters University. But go ahead.
Oh, well, maybe they're related. But
same person.
Same person. And I went to this bank, and they gave me an opportunity, and they gave me a loan for, I think it was like $600,000.
Okay.
And I was able to buy this building. Now, when you're buying something, you have to get a deposit, right? So where did this deposit come from to buy this building? It came from my house.
The equity in the house?
So at the time, remember, when I bought it for $132 and I pulled all that money and it was worth like $220, whatever. Now this time it's like 2 years later. So my house is now worth like $400,000. So I was able to pull out a chunk of equity in my house. So now that was
meaning that you refinanced and pulled out the money.
Refinanced it. And I was able to pull out that money to use as a down payment for my commercial building. Now, remember, when I thought through all that, I had to make sure that whatever I was buying, the rental income for that would now not only give me profit, but would also cover the money that I took out of the house. So
that's how you started. But it worked. There was a point, though, where you thought you were just going to sell, multi-million-dollar mansions to rich couples.
Fine. So yes. So what happened was after I bought that building, life changed further. That's a whole nother story. But I decided I didn't want to be in the career that I was in anymore, and I wanted to change. So I quit sporadically without thinking of what I was going to do. I was right about to get married, and I got permission from my wife. I'm like, I need to get out of this situation. I'm quitting. She said, okay. I sat on the couch for like 2 weeks, sulking, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I said, oh my God, I'm going to go get my real estate license.
Right.
So I went, got my real estate license, and tried to figure out steps forward, moving to what type of sales I want to do or what type of real estate sales I want to do. Now, I had another aunt that was in real estate at this point, because this was an aunt through marriage. Different aunt.
Okay.
And she worked for a high-end luxury real estate brokerage. And I said, okay, I like high-end. I could do high-end.
You're like, the more expensive, the better.
The more expensive, the better, bougie, right? So I went out. After passing my test, I got hired by this brokerage. And I said, I'm going to go out and get big listings. So in the first 3 weeks of working, I had 4 appointments at $3 million houses and up. Now, remember, I had no idea what I was doing. I had never sold a real estate house before.
I think this is the beauty about being young. You had no idea that you shouldn't be selling those houses.
Correct.
And you just went and did it. You were like, I'm going to walk in here and I'm going to give you a listing presentation.
Yes. Yeah. But I was in for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
So I got the appointments, which was huge.
Right.
We're talking
Good
about
for you.
One of them was like the chief surgeon for Mount Sinai cardio. These were very, at the time,
real people.
People with real careers in high-level places, not me who had no career, who was just starting out. But I got them to give me the appointment. So I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm going to go to my broker, who is supposed to be the almighty, right? Because your brokers are supposed to be almighty. So what I learned now, looking back, not all brokers are created equal, or whatever, you know what I'm saying with that.
Yep.
So this broker we went, had my broker, had my manager. We went on these appointments. Struck down on each appointment, kill after kill after kill. Now, who was I going up against? There was another version of me in another company, but someone who had started in real estate when they were like 20. Okay, so same age, same energy, but experience, right? So remember, I didn't have the experience. I had the energy, but I didn't have the experience. So I was relying on my team, my broker, and my manager to help position me into the sales for these properties. And because these people were so smart, they realized that I was going to be the point person, because these were people that were pretty busy, these higher level people that I brought.
And they wanted someone with real experience, not some.
And they wanted someone with more real experience. So I didn't get any of the listings.
So now why did you, because you didn't stay with residential real estate.
No.
And why did you leave residential real estate?
I know you love this one.
I do.
Have to be politically correct.
Please.
Okay. I don't like the color of the carpeting or the color of the walls determining whether or not I'm going to be able to feed my family that month. So
in the past, you've told me, I don't want some wife saying that I don't like the carpet or the color of the walls to determine whether it's bought. But you're
Pretty
right.
much, yes.
But you're right. And it could be a wife. It could be a husband.
It could be anybody.
But
yeah.
when you're dealing with residential, someone can't, they don't all have that insight that you do to see something that's not there.
And we talked about earlier,
Right.
we talked about being able to visualize. Most people can't visualize.
Right.
And that's been one of my biggest assets. And we talk about doing asset assessments in the book that we're writing. But if you can't visualize things, then you don't have the ability to make decisions on something. And when you show someone 30 or 40 houses that just don't look or don't give people that vibe, they can't visualize how to change it. And I just couldn't stomach that. I was like, this is crazy. How do I convince this house person that if you paint the wall from pink to brown, it's going to
look
perfect,
different, right?
It was too much for me. So I decided that I would rather go into the business end of things because I love business. So I went from that and I went into property management.
Okay.
I quit where I was and I went and I found a job in Jersey City as a property manager. And I was managing condo buildings. I was managing investment properties. I was managing office buildings. I was managing parking lots. I worked for a small company. And I was already a business person, so I just needed to learn the ins and outs of managing properties. But it was a great experience. I met tons of people. I did it for about a year. I managed Congressman Frank Guarini's properties in Jersey City. So I had some pretty high-level clients, but it was a great opportunity and helped set the stage for where I was going. Now, you're going to ask where I went.
Right.
During that time, the building that I had purchased,
The one back in the day.
the one back, my first commercial building,
Right.
right? That was just kind of
Your
sitting
grandfather's.
there, earning money, whatever. This was like a year and a half or 2 years after I bought it. All of a sudden, I got an offer to sell it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this was an emotional thing for me because I'm an emotional real estate buyer, just like there's people that are emotional eaters, whatever. Like, I
No,
buy
you shouldn't
stuff.
put emotions into it,
I'm
but go
all
ahead.
about emotion. Like,
Right.
real estate is like, it doesn't make sense. I don't care about the money. I care about the building. It's all emotions for me, which is not the right way to be in real estate, but we can't all be perfect. So, I got an offer on this building and it was a ton of money. Now remember, I'm like 29. I had some assets, but I didn't have a lot of money. And I bought this building for, what did I say, like 700, and now I'm getting an offer for about 1.4. So that's double what I
Right.
paid for it. So now when you look at that, right, I remember to make a decision whether or not to sell this. And because I'm an emotional person, my decision was no. But when I looked at it as to how am I going to move forward in life and how am I going to take my career into my own hands and how am I going to grow, the only decision was to sell it. Because if you can't refinance and pull that money out, which I wouldn't have been able to because the value wasn't there, because the person who bought this was a user. When users buy property, they'll spend more money than it will appraise for.
Okay.
So I had to make this tough decision. So what happened was I ended up walking away from this sale with
From the money?
No, not from the money. I sold it. But I ended up walking away from the transaction with about almost $1 million of liquidity.
Okay.
Okay. So now $1 million of liquidity, I could take one building and I could buy 5 buildings.
Right.
So that's what started me. And I took that one building and I ended up buying like 4 buildings. I did a 1031 exchange, which is a tax exchange, which allows you to exchange one asset for another. So you don't have to pay Uncle Sam. And I was able to use that full $1 million to go out and buy 5 other buildings.
Thanks for watching this episode. Now don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And we'll see you next time.